Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If Ichigo awoke his true powers to save his mother. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 51, The Two That Shine Bright. Squad 4, Hospital. Rukia laid sleeping, recovering after the events of the whole memory theft debacle. After Ichigo destroyed the hollow parasite, everyone moved as fast as they could to keep the situation in the best possible condition. Tessai had permission to use the Forbidden Time Kido to freeze the siblings and Rukia in time while Urahara finished stasis pods for each of them. After the initial calamity with hollowification, Urahara did not want any chances. It was expected that Rukia and the siblings would eventually hollowify, the last attack of the parasite. Ichigo never once left Rukia's side at all in that time. Eventually, she began to wake up inside the stasis field. "Hey Rukia," Ichigo whispered as her eyes began to open. "Nice to see you awake," she moaned as she slowly roused herself from the sleep she was in. "Ichigo, what happened?" she asked as she slowly sat up, confused by his lack of action. "Ichigo, what is this?" She finally noticed the stasis Kido she was in. She looked scared as she stared her lover in the eye. His expression was filled with concern for her as he sympathizes with her worries. "The memory-eating hollow is dead, Rukia," he started, hoping the good news would keep her calm. "You and the siblings are safe for the moment." His expression became more somber as he got to the bad news. "But your souls had bonded with hollow Erasure. The parasites, and then mine. You three are being kept in these fields until Urahara can determine your safety," he explained as she examined the glowing glass-like barrier. "How did we get your hollow Erasure?" she finally asked, almost accusingly. "Well," Ichigo started as he averted his eyes. Flashback, Rukia's inner world. It was a vast landscape of ice and snow, shining like crystals in the light of a sun, never disturbed, new flakes always coming down and keeping it in the beautiful white and rainbow lights. Only two beings ever occupied this land, this beautiful icy wasteland, Rukia and her Zanpakuto, Sodi no Shiraiki. Rukia and many others saw her as the most beautiful of the ice-type Zanpakuto, and her world reflected that beauty and the dangers of the cold. Now that beautiful frozen landscape was in disarray by a harsh blizzard, covering everything in a biting gust and darkness. What once housed only two beings now held three more. The siblings Rukia wanted to protect and keep safe, and the parasite that craved her life. So much power. The hungry beast cried out as it bashed against the ice wall Shiraiki made to protect Rukia and the siblings, all unconscious as the hollow forced the fusion. "Give it to me." Its warped screams crashed against the Zanpakuto's ears, needing to restore the wall after another slash from its tail. She would have no problem against such a pathetic leech, but after gorging itself on so much Erasure from the siblings and Rukia's own before they escaped, it grew to gigantic proportions and her own power was crippled. This ice wall was all she could do for now. I will have it, give me my power." It roared and prepared a Siro to destroy the only barrier between it and its meal. "That's enough out of you," a calm voice called out, overpowering the storm and the monster's cries. The both looked over to see a humanoid figure that was almost entirely white, a skull mask with sharp, angular bull horns, long hair, and tribal lines coming to a single black spot on his chest that seemed like an endless abyss. "That lovely lady you want to eat happens to be a queen, and my king wants her safe and snug," he said while looking at the hollow like it was no concern, not even worth eating. "That's also my woman you're attacking, so I'm a little miffed about that." Shirayuki would be furious at the claim, but he felt so familiar until her eyes widened in recognition. "Zangetsu," she thought as she realized who the figure was. Getting annoyed, the hollow unleashed its Siro on the other Zanpakuto, believing that nothing could challenge it now. Through the torrent of power, Shiraiki saw Zangetsu's silhouette standing strong and weathering the onslaught. Shaking but in an amused fashion, like he found the attack almost comical. As the Zero ended, Zangetsu stood tall and unharmed. Is that the best you've got? He asked, prompting an angry growl from the hollow. It slithered to Zangetsu quickly and tried to slash him with its scythe-tail blade. It attacked with a speed that belied its size, which still failed to hit Zangetsu. Growing more and more frustrated, the hollow tried again and again, slashing, biting, Zeros, anything it could muster to try and harm the hollow Zanpakuto. Suddenly the bladed tail hit true and struck Zangetsu, right into the spirit's hand in crushing grip. Do you know the definition of insanity? He asked, letting his Ryatsu seep out and grow little by little. Clinically, it's a state of being unwell mentally. Other people said that it's doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. His hand released the hollow's tail as it back up and looked at Zangetsu with a growing terror. Can you relate to that? Your blade can't scratch me. Your Zero dash. The hollow released another blast at Zangetsu, and Shiraiki watched his hand rise to grab the blast and destroy it in his grip. Doesn't even faze me. So are you crazy? Ichigo's blade whispered to the parasite, fear pouring forth from the hollow like a waterfall as it tried one more desperate swing of its blade. Faster than anyone there saw, the second the crimson blade came within an inch of his face, his jaws clamped onto the tail. The blade cracked and splintered in his vicious maw, drawing out blood from crushed nerves, before he shook his head and tore off the tail itself. The parasite screamed in agony while Zangetsu spat out the crimson scythe. Do you know the definition of insanity? Zangetsu whispered one more time. The parasite began to flee, running as fast as it could to get away. Zangetsu. Shiraiki started, somewhat fearful of the other hollow. He merely held up a hand and stopped her. Take care of those three. I'll be done soon, he said before disappearing in a burst of speed. The hollow was a distant, lost in the storm, as it tried to flee. Its hopes died when it felt a hand slam into its side and pinned it to the ground, and saw the empty black gaze of Zangetsu. Let's tenderize the meat, shall we? He asked madly as his claws dug into the hollow's body. Without warning he started running at top speeds while grinding the parasite into the ground and ice, tearing its body apart piece by piece. Once half of its body was gone, Zangetsu let go and watched as the remains tumbled another few miles down the path. He slowly walked to the creature while it barely clung to life. He found it, shrunk to its original size of half a foot long. He grabbed it and held it in front of his face. You're a pathetic excuse of a hollow and you taste bland. You were not worth the effort to eat, he said before devouring the parasite, absorbing its erasure and making it his own. After changing the hollow erasure to his own Zanpakuto mix, he returned to Sori no Shiraiki, who dropped her ice wall and restored the calm of the snowy landscape. It's done? She asked, earning a nod from the other Zanpakuto. I still feel that dark, empty, chaotic energy. The snow woman clutched her chest. But now it feels calmer. She watched the dark blade come to her and remove his mask, revealing the bone-white copy of Ichigo. This is you, she whispered as he kissed her. She closed her eyes to embrace it for the precious few seconds they were connected. It will not change you and she won't have complete hollowification, Zangetsu explained to his snow woman lover, for now anyways. But she will have to learn how to control it, he said before embracing her one more time. Time for me to go, he said before he faded from the inner world. Present, Squad 4? So yeah, you're going to need to talk with the other wizards, Ichigo said, not looking at Rukia, who was currently glaring at him. She was safe, but at the cost of being infected with hollow erasure. It would be beneficial to have the powers, but unless it was her own then it was just going to throw her soul out of balance. Meaning she was bedridden in that stasis field for the foreseeable future until Kasuk could whip something up. She just accepted the state of her life and scanned the room, finding the siblings on life support in their own stasis fields. She gasped in shock and concern, seeing the two she cared for in such a state. Ichigo followed her gaze and sighed at the sight. After Zangetsu destroyed that parasite and separated the three of you, they explained what happened. Ichigo told her while she kept looking at the two. It was a little over a century ago when the parasite attacked you through a Soul Reaper host. You told them to run but they refused to abandon you, staying to try and protect you. It mortally wounded them just as her teleportation powers activated and fused the hollow to them. It fed on their power and shaved away their sanity until it deemed them ready. They never healed and were back to almost dying before Tessai and Kasuke put them there. Hachi tried to reverse their time with a Kido he made, but it was too far back for him to restore. He finished just as the girl's eyes opened up, slowly and weak, but she was awake. She saw her sister figure and smiled through the pain and exhaustion. "Rukia," she said weakly, her voice muffled by a breathing mask. "I'm sorry for the trouble we dash." Her breathing was labored, still weak from the disconnection from the hollow parasite. "It's all right," Rukia said, interrupting the girl. "You two did nothing wrong. Just get some rest and recover." The door opened to reveal Unohana, who smiled brightly at her patients. "Good, you three are awake," she said, keeping up that motherly attitude. "That means you're recovering just fine," she said before going to the siblings and picking up the sister's clipboard. "Now to get your names." The captain looked at them expectantly, even when they turned away with a look of shame. "Her name is Hamura," Rukia said, earning a look of surprise from the siblings before tears of joy began to form. "And his name is Shizuku. I promised, didn't I?" Rukia smiled to the siblings, who were crying in joy. "The two of you shine brightly, HM?" Unohana said thoughtfully. "Those are wonderful names, Rukia. Good choice." The senior captain smiled approvingly while the now-named siblings tried to reach each other through the stasis field. "Last names?" Unohana asked again while writing the names down. "You can put them down as Shiba Retsu," a rough tomboy called out as Kukaku barged in, showing the apathy for authority or formality that was common amongst the Shiba. The captain merely took it in stride and wrote down the names. "Hopefully you can be discharged soon so we can meet on more pleasant circumstances," Unohana said as she finished the checkup. "Welcome, Hamura and Shizuka Shiba. I hope to get to know the both of you later on." She then left them with Kukaku, who gave her trademark smirk to the people in the room. "Byakuya told me what you promised the kids, so it stood to reason that they'd want to stay with you as family." Kukaku began explaining her actions. "Problem is that the Kuchiki elders are breathing down his neck, just waiting for an excuse to get rid of him. He already broke the law with you and your sister Rukia, then he spat in their faces at your wedding, so I decided what the hell, and got them registered in my clan." She turned her gaze to the stunned sibling and smiled as bright as her fireworks. "The clan she married into when she got hitched to my cousin." Hamura and Shizuku's eyes widened as they put the pieces together. "That's right, kiddos, you are now legally related to Rukia. Welcome to the family." The waterworks returned, but Kukaku decided to let it pass. The kids finally had family, she'd let them celebrate. "I'll have Shiraga Nahiko pick them up after they recover," she said as she began to depart. "Rest up, you two. I don't like slackers in the family," she yelled before shutting the door. She really believes in tough love. Ichigo muttered under his breath, causing Rukia to giggle. They stayed like that a few more hours, talking about how order was being restored throughout the Gotei squads. Love's squad still needed work as there was still chaos among the ranks and the Rukon folk. After a while, Urahara, Tessai, Hachi, and Yamamoto entered the room, carrying a small box that was riddled with seals. Ichigo bowed respectfully. Rukia tried but was unable in her seated position, and the siblings were completely lost, only knowing to feel nervous when the old man looked at them directly. "Though not entirely your fault, you both caused no small measure of trouble for all of us," Yamamoto scolded the two, making them flinch reflexively. "You have potential, but are undisciplined. That is something I will not abide. After you are fully recovered, you will both attend Shino Academy to refine your skills." He spoke roughly, shocking the two that they weren't getting punished. "Lieutenant Rukia," she jumped as the head captain addressed her, "you are to tutor the two of them in your spare time." "Understood?" "Yes, sir," she said, over-enthusiastically. "I won't let you down." He merely grunted in approval before letting Kasuke come forward with the box. "Ichigo, within this box is the Hogyoku." Urahara started, surprising Ichigo with that small detail. I used it before to try and reverse the hollowification that Shinji and the others were going through. Instead, it stabilized them into the wizards you know today, so we're doing that. Tensai and Hachi are going to dispel the stasis barriers while you activate the Hogyoku with the central thought of I want to save them. That should fix things. He explained, making Ichigo nod a little nervously. Light flashed from the box as the seal was undone, revealing the black jeweled ball. The barriers dropped slowly as Ichigo charged his hand full of Rapier. Make them better. Ichigo thought as his hand drew near the sphere, an inky blackness reaching out to meet his finger. Don't let them die. He connected to the Hogyoku and the room was engulfed in an explosion of light. Vandenreach, throne room. Basby delivered his report to the Quincy King about Ichigo and Yuryu's response to their meeting. How they bore resentment to the Emperor for what happened to their mothers and that they wanted no part with the Quincy. He didn't reveal the extent of their hate for the man, just that they were different from the prideful Quincy that fought the Soul Reapers. He never let it slip that he considered they might be right, that Yhwach was not the savior or ally the Vandenreach saw him as. That old grudges Baz had were slowly coming back to him. He stuck around because of his friend Jugram, but what would be the point if the entirety of the Quincy were expendable? My poor naive sons. Yhwach said after Bazard finished. If only they knew the truth of the Shinigami and their depravity. No matter. He gave a dismissive wave of his hand to the Heat, who bowed as he backed away. They will learn the truth soon enough. All my children are equally precious to me. Precious as what? Bazard thought to himself as he left, only sparing a slight glance to his old friend. Ichigo and Yuryu, we will talk more about this matter. He made his way for the Sun Gate to depart back to the world of the living. Las noches, Aizen study. Now, how to go about it and who to send? Aizen asked himself as he plotted. He needed a way to get Ichigo to Hueco Mundo and keep him there, meaning a hostage or two. He considered Oraheim but nothing about her proved useful. He learned about her being an exorcist but then she disappeared from his radar. Tatsuki would likely die before being brought in and hostages are only good when they're alive. Masaki was an excellent choice, but he didn't know if her powers returned. The final choice was obvious, a pair of little sisters that he would fight anything for. On the other side of the room was a loyal bat and a traitorous snake. What is going through Lord Aizen's head right now? Ulquiorra asked, looking at the images on the screen and seeing the siblings. They almost reminded him of his old friend at that age. If I know Aizen, and I do for the most part, he's thinking of bringing Ichigo's sisters as our guests. Jin said, emphasizing guests to let the implications sit in. There was the barest hint of the Hollow's eyes widening before setting to normal. A decision that might destroy Las Noches. Ulquiorra stated, knowing full well what chaos might come of those fights. Depends on who goes, and who he fights. Jin said before leaving the Arrancar with his thoughts. Grimjaw finally embraced his destructive self and has shown a lack of care for rank so long as he could fight. Even without that ace Ulquiorra taught him, he'd still be assured the 5th rank when he returns to his place among the Espada. No one likes his replacement. Ulquiorra looked at the image of Ichigo's sisters with a strange feeling in his chest. What is this heavy feeling? West Rukon 25. I'm going to do one more sweep and then head back. Ganju reported to his patrol unit in the 14th Squad. When people started losing their memories, he did a few things that he was not particularly proud of and Love did not appreciate. It ended with a fist to his face and more than a few broken teeth, an issue that plenty of people need resolved. He was going through alleys and back roads, trying to find anything out of the ordinary, when he heard a familiar voice. It worked splendidly, the voice sounded out, definitely an improvement over the previous form. Is that 3rd seat Kibune? Ganju asked himself as he hid himself and followed the direction of Kibune's voice until he found the 3rd seat of his squad, talking to a man with a scar and a mask covering from his nose to his neck with purple hair and dressed like an armored ninja. Finally, the dirt captain Love wanted. He thought in excitement as he watched the two. Since we got our new benefactors, we've been able to improve the Bakoto to greater strengths than before. The ninja said, sounding pleased. But, it seems like the princess is becoming aware of the situation. If we fail to kill her, she may flee to the world of the living. Ganju's eyes widened as he couldn't believe his ears. The idea was that Makoto just wanted power for himself, but this was political cloak and dagger stuff. I heard about the prowess of Kurosaki Ichigo, but what about his weaknesses? Bah ha ha. Makoto laughed, almost like he considered the whole thing like it was a bad joke. From what that idiot Ganju said, anything concerning his family could be considered his weakness. Pacifying him should be easy from there. Ganju struggled to keep himself hidden, from the initial outrage of them threatening his family, to laughing at the idea of them fighting his cousin, then terror and what Ichigo would do if his family was threatened. I need to get to the captain. Ganju thought as he utilized what flash step he could manage to reach the leader of his squad. Illustrated Guide to Soul Reapers. Hiyori trains the new wizards. Alright, listen up. Hiyori yelled out to the trio of Rukia and the siblings. It took a couple days, but they recovered enough to begin wizard training. Since the other wizards are busy with their squads and my job can be done by any of Kasuk's stupid monkeys, I get the wonderful job of training you ungrateful jackasses. The siblings were cowering behind Rukia while the lieutenant glared at the foul-tempered girl. My training is simple and comes in 3 easy steps. Step 1, Endurance. She said before pointing at 3 old-fashioned walker exercise machines. The Super Hiyori Walker V2. Get on and don't stop till I say so. The trio stared at the machines like they were some kind of joke. Rose came walking by, planning to have tea with Jushiro after the 5th invite he got from the sickly man. He saw the people and the machines and merely let out a sorrowful sigh. You have my condolences, Rukia. Hiyori's temp replacement. The meek, brown-haired member of Squad 12 sent to handle Hiyori's job made his way into the shop that served as Squad 15's base of operations. He almost tripped over his feet a couple of times, but the frontline soldiers of the 15th were ready and able to catch him. Particularly before he broke something expensive, again. The top-notch scientist made his way deeper into the compound and was met by third seat Lisa. Ah, you must be our temporary comms officer sent to replace Hiyori. She stated, looking through her schedule log. Yes. The boy responded with a shy nod. I'm Rin Sabokura, ma'am. Follow me. Lisa ordered quickly, not letting the boy continue as she led him into the monitoring room. Once they got there, Rin's eyes started to sparkle as he saw piles of candies and sweets littering the room. His sweet tooth ached to try each and every kind in front of him, but as he reached for the first pile his hand was smacked by Lisa's booklet. Eating snacks here is forbidden. This job requires constant vigilance and no distractions, no matter how minor. Not even bathroom breaks. She scolded sternly, showing a cold and evil side that lectured the newbie until he felt like a shriveled-up worm. So how long is she going to indulge in this sadist phase? One of the soul reapers that was in the know asked his co-worker. Probably until the lieutenant gives her a spanking like she keeps asking. She responded, wishing they kept the S&M stuff out of the pervert's hands. Shameless Avengers reference. I have an army. Aizen boasted to the upstart hybrid that dared to invade his fortress of Las Noches. We have Zaraki. Ichigo returned, making Aizen's eyes widen in recognition and shock. Outside the throne room, in the desert expanse within the massive fortress, was the Kenpachi who just bisected a skeleton wearing a crown and mist-like cloak with a large axe. Puny God. He growled as the body faded away. Chapter 52, Danger Within the Ranks. Squad 14 HQ Base, Love's Office. So Makoto was talking to this shady figure on the edges of our jurisdiction and it might involve the assassination of a princess and they might target Ichigo. Love summarized after Ganju delivered his report. After many of the squad lost chunks of their memory, the Rukon became a nightmare. Various riots, infighting amongst the squad, the whole thing went to hell until he started punching people. He preferred the more peaceful solutions, but he was no stranger to using violence. Ichigo defeated the memory-eating hollow and started to restore peace, which still took a while. The chaos made everyone get sloppy, including the suspected traitors among his squad. Who is the princess and what are these Bakoto exactly? Should I continue watching third seat Makoto? Ganju asked, eager to do whatever to help his cousin. Ever since he joined the Rokon squad, Ganju had trained himself almost constantly, determined to never be a burden on his allies again. Something Captain Love was happy to help with, along with a sadism to rival his big sis. Yeah, but we'll have to put more eyes on him, the wizard said after a moment of thought. Part of him thought about how easy it would be with that fool-bringer, Tsukishima, but that ability rubbed him the wrong way and he needed proof for his suspicions of Makoto and Amagai. He spied a proposal on his desk that he never had the time to get around to that seemed to be the perfect chance. And a team exercise might be the best chance. He snatched up the paperwork that his lieutenant made after reviewing the Ryoka invasion by Ichigo and his friends. The biggest failing was a lack of teamwork and coordination among the squads that left most confused while the captains and lieutenants were the only capable soldiers. Keep your eye to the ground, Ganju, I'll take this to the head captain and we'll see what happens. He got up to leave and saw a troubled look on his subordinate's face. Don't worry about Ichigo. People that underestimate him tend to end up in terrible condition. Remember? He still doesn't like killing people, Captain. Ganju countered. But I'll do whatever I can to help. The Shiba won't lose any more family. Rukia's wizard training. Rukia took a few deep breaths as she prepared for the harder stage of her new training, attaining that hollow power. According to Hiyori and the others, this part was about dominating the inner hollow originally. Ichigo, never being one for tradition or predictability, had to prove that he was capable of controlling that power. It doesn't change much about the process, but the difference was that his life wasn't at risk. Most of the wizards, Mayuri and Urahara, believe this is the same with Rukia and the siblings, but they would still run wild until they managed to gain control of the hollow. All right, bunny girl. Hiyori called out, leading Rukia to the field where Hachigen waited. We'd usually get the other wizards to gather up and take turns fighting you until you succeeded in this phase. Instead, we've got this cocky jackass who said he'd handle it. Almost an instant later, Ichigo appeared in the field and started stretching. While you duke it out in your inner world, he'll fight you outside. Now get in there and he'll handle the rest, she said, roughly pushing Rukia toward her husband while a barrier grew around them. So, Rukia started when she got in front of the hybrid, what now? The second she asked, Ichigo had his hand in front of her with light emanating from his hand. Try to be quick. I don't want to hurt you too much, Ichigo said while using the Kido spell, Tanma Otoshi, and forcing her into her inner world. Rukia's inner world. Rukia found herself back in her inner world, the serene frozen landscape restored after the damned parasite dug its way into her mind and soul. She looked around, trying to find either Sodi no Shiraiki or the hollow that now occupied her soul. Why are you here? She heard a warped version of her Zanpakuto's voice call out. She eventually saw a figure, wearing Shiraiki's kimono with an expressionless mask and a long icy blue line curved to her chin from her right eye. To what end are you here? Rukia was stunned before taking a second to compose herself. The similarity between her hollow and her Zanpakuto was staggering. I have come for the power that belongs to me, she said, trying to sound strong and confident. The power you will grant me for taking residence in my soul. To her annoyance, the hollow being began laughing. Why? So you can fail to fully utilize it? The figure asked sarcastically. You can't even wield your own Zanpakuto properly. You merely boast about its beauty but never its strength. She scolded the Shinigami, making Rukia wince as some points hit home. You want to convince me you can harness my power, you need to prove you can actually use yours. The hollow yelled as it unsheathed a blue version of Rukia's Shuriken and charged, barely giving her enough time to block the strong attack. With Ichigo. He gently lowered her down, took a step back and waited for the battle to begin. Soon enough, the white substance that formed the hollow's calcified masks began to form on her face. Soon she rose with half being an expressionless, featureless mask and the other being a manic grin. I was expecting a demonic rabbit. Like one of those crappy bunny drawings of hers, Ichigo said to himself as she charged at him. He raised his arm to block the blade and winced as the blade was lodged halfway in his forearm. Not enough to break my seal, but enough that I shouldn't play around. He thought before striking her chest with his palm and pushing her back quite a ways. She flipped and recovered before releasing her blade's shurikai. Ha! Dance! Sori no Shiraiki. She called out in a frenzied and warped voice as an icy breeze swept the area before a circle around Ichigo glowed. With Rukia. She's so strong. Rukia thought as she barely managed to block another attack from her hollow, even with her release of her sword. And what is she talking about? She hastily jumped away from another wave of ice that came at her. I know my dances, the freezing touch, what does she mean? She asked herself as her hollow swung her blade and the space Rukia was standing in began to glow. She jumped to the side, just barely avoiding the pillar of ice that erupted. Tsukushiro. But dash. I didn't draw the circle? Her hollow asked as it appeared behind her before slapping her away. Are you doubting me or your sword? She asked the Soul Reaper. But then again, what would you know? It's not like you actually proved your strength or anything. Rukia spat out some blood from a cut inside her cheek. What do you mean? She demanded as she pulled herself to her feet. I'm the lieutenant of Squad 13. The one chosen to guard the world of the living before that. I was one of the top students at the academy. This only got a mocking laugh in response. Yes, you have a paper that says you know the skills in a station that was vacant for years after your mentor died. The hollow returned. You hesitated when Ichigo was surrounded by hollows and took your place as the city defender. You barely fought back when you were arrested. Now you live with another clan because you can't protect yourself. All you've ever done, Rukia, is rely on others. You have no ambition to get stronger, else you could let Yukitake retire and take his place. At least stop getting saved by everyone else. You're useless on your own. Rukia practically lost balance under the verbal assault. You can't protect anyone, let alone yourself. You're dead weight, Rukia. Even Hamura and Shizuku know that. At the mention of the siblings, she froze. Memories of her time with the two flooded her mind. With Ichigo. Bala! Ichigo shouted as he punched the blast of Racier at the hollowfying Rukia. After getting frozen solid and still healing from minor frostbite, Ichigo was a little annoyed. Rukia was developing bony ribs wrapping along her chest and hips while getting coated in a skin-tight suit of bone armor covering half of her right side. She kept up the barrage of attacks, ice pillars, ice torrents, and he could swear that the area around him was getting colder by the second. He dodged another torrents of freezing air and Rukia got behind him and slashed him across his back, leaving a gash in ice where she cut. Ah, damn it! Ichigo cursed as he staggered away and regenerated from the attack. I'm starting to lose patience here. There's an easier way to handle this king. Zangetsu chimed in, sounding more amused than anything. I'm always ready to hear your advice, Zangetsu. There was a silence, hinting that Zangetsu found that line to be false. When it comes to fighting. There we go. Zangetsu said in agreement. If you listened to me at other times, you would have lost that V-card a lot sooner. Ichigo had to dodge another strike and even drew his sword to block. Anytime, Zangetsu. Ichigo roared as he blocked a Hakuren with a Getsuga. Dude, it's a hollow. The Zanpakuto explained. Appeal to animal instincts. He offered as Ichigo thought about that. He broke his second seal and unleashed his full spiritual pressure, Quincy, Hollow, and Soul Reaper. Rukia froze in place before adopting a different grin. With Rukia. The white blade of Sori no Shiraiki fell from her fingers as she let her fingers go numb. The Hollow watched as the Soul Reaper appeared to give up. She only stared in disappointment as the image of the strong and confident Rukia was shattered by realizing how weak she was. The Hollow lifted up her blue sword and prepared to strike down the failure of a master. Heido number 31. Shakaho. Rukia yelled out while bringing up her hands for the spell. She shot the fireball spell point blank in the Hollow's stomach, forcing her back several feet. The reflection of the Zanpakuto glared at Rukia with grim approval as her foot spun her sword away and she flashed in front of the Hollow. I refuse to be a burden any longer. Rukia roared as she engaged in a swift barrage of punches and kicks, throwing her opponent off with the unexpected switch in tactics. I will master my blade. I will control these hollow powers. And I will become strong. The hollow soon took control of the flow again and landed a cut on Rukia's cheek, forcing her back. How will you master your sword if it's out of your hands? The hollow asked as the two circled around the other, Rukia getting further from her sword. Simple. Some no mai, Tsukishiro. Rukia answered as a massive glowing circle appeared, with Rukia out of it and the hollow inside it. You can draw circles in places, but there was never a defined radius for that circle, is there? Clever. The hollow conceded, flashing out of range just before the pillar formed. But not fast enough. She was in front of Rukia again, ready to cut her down, until she felt a cold stab in her stomach. San no mai, Shirafune. Rukia held her hands like she was holding a sword, and a blade of ice formed in her hands, which went through the hollow. I told you. I will master my sword and take my powers. Rukia growled at her opponent. You were right about me being a burden. No more. The mask remained unreadable, but the eyes shone a happy brightness to them. You'd best keep that promise. Lady Rukia, she said while Rukia's eyes widened in shock before awakening. With Ichigo. Ichigo laid on his back, victorious against his hollowified wife, just waiting for her to wake up. After unleashing his power, she stopped trying to kill him. Instead, she tackled him to the ground, bit him on the neck, and was now purring on his chest. He was unsure of how to feel at that moment. Soon enough, Rukia began to wake up. Evidenced by the armor crumbling to dust and leaving her with a featureless mask with an icy blue talon down her right eye. She pushed herself up and looked around, questioningly, before removing her mask. Congratulations, Ichigo said with a happy smirk. You can now harness your mask. She looked down at him, surprised at first before gaining an arrogant smirk. I certainly didn't expect you to be under me. She hummed in approval of her apparent love bite. Can't say I'm disappointed though. I didn't expect you to purr like a cat. Ichigo countered with his own grin. Or go into heat. Rukia froze, and not out of chill. Speaking of which, Ichigo took a few sniffs. You should probably change your underwear. Rukia was steaming for a few seconds before encasing Ichigo in another pillar of ice. First Division Barracks. The possible assassination of a noble. Yamamoto noted from the report Love gave him. A potential conflict with Squad 15 should the noble flee to the world of the living. Bakoto, something I never wanted to hear about again. He let out a tired sigh, feeling the weight of his years. I should have continued those investigations. Commander, you knew about this? Love asked his superior. He informed the old man of his suspicions and offered the idea Amagai presented to try to get more eyes on Makoto Kibune and others in his squad. He never let up on his suspicions of his lieutenant. What's going on, sir? I've had a long-standing suspicion that something was not right with the Kasumiyaji family, but I was denied access by the Central 46. Yamamoto explained, digging up some of his old regrets. I had one squad member that was willing to infiltrate and find anything he could on the possible coup that was brewing. Unfortunately, he was discovered and captured, then forced to wield a Bakoto and attack me. The ancient dragon's eyes drifted to a list of names labeled Kia. His name was Shinetsu Kisaragi, and he was a good and loyal soldier. The two held a moment of silence for the fallen before returning to the crux of the matter. Bakoto are parasitic weapons, feeding on the wielder's ryatsu while giving power before completely consuming them. These weapons became illegal when their threat was revealed. So either the entire family is planning to revolt, Love said as he tried to put the pieces together, or someone is trying to usurp the family. Likely the second, as Makoto and his contact discussed killing a princess. Which means the current head is unaware of what's happening. I'll have someone do a more thorough background check on your lieutenant in third seat, Yamamoto stated as he rose from his chair. And we'll need to alert Ishin that he'll be playing host to Rurakayo Kasumiyaji. You go and do what your lieutenant proposed as a test. If what Yoruichi told us about when she and Ichigo infiltrated is at all true, then this should be both embarrassing and fun to watch. Love noted as he left the leader of the Gotii. Yes. It probably will. With Ichigo. Well, that was a day. Ichigo groaned, stretching himself after breaking free of the ice and soaking in a hot spring at the 4th Division barracks. He figured he'd help the siblings, but apparently having a hollow parasite possessing you for years made it like riding a bike for them, and they naturally harnessed their masks. Kasuke put trackers and inhibitors on them to record their progress as they undergo Shinigami training. Ichigo was about to leave when he noticed a hell butterfly flying around and making an urgent announcement. Urgent message. Urgent message. A female announcer called out. Minos have been detected entering the Ciritii. Ichigo was shocked before reason kicked in. Wait, if there are Minos, then we should have seen or at least heard them. He thought as the announcer ordered everyone to mobilize. He reached out with his senses and did find traces of hollow erasure, but nothing on the level of a Minos. Something's not right here. Ichigo jumped into the air and kept himself aloft with a erasure platform and began to survey the area. He found the various squads mobilizing, but some were in chaos. The 7th and 11th squads seemed to be competing with Iba and Ikaku racing each other. Mayuri had the 12th close off a large section and was arguing with Ranjaku, and the 10th, the 3rd, and 9th were getting along but ended up butting heads with the 6th, 8th, and 13th squads. The 14th had to calm down the civilian population, and the 5th was missing while the 2nd and 4th were just waiting around confused. This is our army? The next announcement shouted that the Minos were located in the northeast section of the Ciritii, leaving the army of Soul Reapers to scramble like headless chickens toward that area or to keep fighting each other. We're screwed. He released a pulse to find Yamamoto and felt him walking with Yukitake and some of the other captains. He immediately made his fastest jumps to them and listened in from above. I authorized this false alarm and Captain Aikawa acted on that order. He heard his sensei explain to his direct subordinates. In order to see the worth in his lieutenant's proposal of joint training exercises to prevent the same mess Ichigo and his friends made on their infiltration. He said, looking over the city and the army of Shinigami while several Jillians appeared. So far, I am greatly disappointed in what we've seen. If they can't handle these false hollows, then we are ill-prepared for any real battle. Then this is where I come in. Ichigo thought as he flashed above the assembly of Soul Reapers and painting out a Kido spell pattern on his arms. Bakudo number 77, Tentakura. Ichigo initiated the broadcasting message spell and let his voice be heard. Listen up, dumbass. Instead of fighting each other, do your damn jobs. He roared, loudly enough that the people could feel the sound waves through their bodies. We have 6 Jillians and no one going for them. Squad 11, break into groups and go on the attack. At his orders, the thugs of the 11th began making their way, over the walls and other barriers, toward the hollow. Squad 4, send your medics with them while squads 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 join in either Kido support, distractions, or evac. Squads 2 and 12, I want intel. Outfit the patrol units with scanners and get some answers. Squads 13 and 14, ensure the safety of the civilians. He finished delivering as the various units broke into teams consisting of various different squad members, all led by the battle-ready lieutenants, while Mayuri, reluctantly, did as commanded. Rukia led a team to the Rukon while Ganju and Amagai were making progress. He even thought he saw Hamura and Shizuku with their sister figure. Soon the others began destroying the fake hollows and he made his way to the other captains. He landed in front of Yamamoto as the last Jillian fell. Your results? Yamamoto nodded in approval of his disciple. After your eavesdropping, you took good command of the situation. Ichigo winced and chuckled nervously. The joint training exercises have my blessing. Lieutenant Amagai will handle that while you return to your station. Be ready, Ichigo. Ichigo nodded as he opened a Garganta. Illustrated Guide to Soul Reapers. Byakuya's brother Sense. Captain Byakuya Kochiki is a man of refined tastes, particularly of art. One of the bonding activities he did with his sister-in-law was pursuing that art of drawing and even sculpture, a favorite subject being rabbits. He was indulging in making a sketch of what he thought his dear sister's elegant hollow mask would look like when he thought he heard something. Crappy bunny drawings dash. Why do I want to hurt Ichigo all of a sudden? Hamura and Shizuku helping. Listen here, Soul Reaper. A Rokon citizen was yelling. Look, it's for your own protection. A Shinigami returned. The warning about the Minos sent the whole Rokon into a flux. Everyone was fighting, demanding protection or getting people to follow orders. The whole thing was a mess. In front of the two groups, a pale blonde girl in the white and red student uniform appeared. Everyone, please. Hamura looked up with teary eyes. Please stop fighting, she said as she slowly broke down crying. Shizuku appeared by her side in the male's white and blue uniform and held her close. Please, my sister hates conflict, he said, trying to sound strong for Hamura. Can't you work together for your own sake? Hamura gave them one more teary-eyed pleading look, making all the men blush at the cuteness while feeling terrible about making her cry. Well, you are trying to help, a shop owner said, looking away from the siblings. We also want to make sure our favorite vendors can open shop, a Soul Reaper said as the group dispersed for the safety bunkers. Once they were gone, the siblings looked up to Rukia, who received a thumbs up from the two. I have taught you well. What Squad 5 was doing? You have got to be freaking kidding me. Shinji groaned, rubbing his forehead in annoyance while standing in front of his locked office door. I have work to do in there, now let me in. No. A woman inside cried out. There's a message in here for me. There has to be. Captain Aizen must be hiding something. Something to explain all this madness. Momo, we looked everywhere and found nothing. Shinji explained for the third time. Now get out of there before you start going through my underwear again. I thought the drawer was supposed to be for files, she said, clearly embarrassed. Chapter 53, Preparations. With Tatsuki. Everything around her was burning, a field of flames that devoured everything in their wake. It was scorching hot and the air was suffocating with the heat. She thought she understood the power of the flames, wielding them in her hands and feet with every punch and kick. Now she felt vulnerable to fire for the first time in so long. She was in her inner world after training to the point that her Aswachi became her Zanpakuto. Now she searches for the name of her weapon. She went into her meditative trance, proud and confident, before finding herself in her current situation, feeling herself submit to the fires all around her. Is this really my world? She thought in confusion as she felt her skin burn. How is this my inner world? Fire does not always mean destruction. A voice called out as a massive bright red and orange hawk flew in above her. It can mean that when control is lost, but it can be so much more. She spoke in a gentle tone that hid a fierceness to it. Something you have yet to understand. Tatsuki stared at the majestic and beautiful creature, entranced by the dancing flames of its body. When it finished talking, she asked her questions. Are you my Zanpakuto spirit? She started, staring directly into the bird's eyes. I am. She responded, quickly and simply. My name is ... She spoke, but the final words were lost to Tatsuki. I guess you don't think I'm ready to learn your name, she said, somewhere between angry, insulted, and disappointed. Figures it wouldn't be that easy. It's not entirely whether I think that, more whether you do, the bird said, earning confusion from her wielder. You're still haunted from that day you first encountered the Arrancar. Tatsuki listened as the spirit continued. You envy the others in your squad for being able to charge in without hesitation or fear, their confidence in their strength. You even believe you're weaker than Oraheim. Tatsuki's eyes widened at that statement. That's Dash. She began in anger, forcing the flames to become more intense and burn her harshly. What are you in this group? Her spirit asked, still calm in spite of the growing inferno. The girl that punches things, the straight martial artist. There's a small list of what Ichigo is not capable of. Yuria can keep up with him, Chad can do what you do and is able to tank almost anything, even Oraheim is matching you as a fighter who can summon spirits to do most any task. Tatsuki could only listen, her fury feeding the fires around her as each statement reminded her of something she didn't like to think about. You consider yourself the weak link. I'm not denying you anything, you are. You are a glass cannon, a tower built on a poor foundation. A single good strike will break you. She said as Tatsuki felt herself break out of her trance and onto her back, gasping for breath. Not a pleasant experience, I take it? Yoruchi asked, looking at her shaken disciple on the ground. Tatsuki didn't respond as she struggled to her feet, her short zanpakuto blade in hand as she faced her teacher with a look of shaky determination. Again. With Chad. Enough. Chad said as he dispelled his full bring, his fingers rubbing his medallion and smiling at the progress they've made. He and the other Fullbringers returned to the world of the living to continue their search for others like them and training their developing skills. This has been good progress, Sato. Jackie said, examining her boots. Jackie's dirty boots enveloped her entire body, along with the ability to make them as dirty as possible on her own, as well as a new power. A perfect defense to match her offense, which unfortunately must reset every time she switches modes. As much as I am glad to enhance my own abilities, I must admit my skepticism to simply turning into a hulking brute. Jericho said as he looked over his new armor, white plating on his left shoulder and right thigh with a single arrow pointing up and down respectively on them. He was also curious about the many floating clocks floating behind him like a halo, wondering their meaning. Maybe it has something to do with my contracts with time. Sato was stronger than you anyway. Riruka said, wearing bunny ears on her hat and wearing white armor on her legs and chest with large fist guards on her arms with yellow prongs and heart emblems on the fists. Not sure how much help I'll be in a fight. All I seem to do is stick things in plushies. Ever thought that you could be the squad's jailer? Yukio suggested, having come over to simply give them a new training area while the others worked. He gave them a copy of the training room under the Shoten where they trained themselves to unlock their potential. That would be useful. No way. Jailers aren't cute. Riruka denied almost immediately, earning a groan of annoyance from her fellow Fullbringers. Cute doesn't seduce the strawberry. Sexy does. Jackie yelled out. You should try being sexy. They two women soon devolved to what amounted to pointless arguing while the guys did their best to ignore them. I could probably take them off your hands too if you wanted. Yukio suggested, causing Chad to shake his head. You're doing us enough favors by taking that Shishigawara guy. He said, standing up while the game room dissipated. Things seem to be coming to a head out there anyway. The air itself feels tense. With Oraheim? I got this. Oraheim panted, covered in sweat, dirt, and bruises, while keeping her focus on two floating orbs. One that was fire while the other was water, both working in tandem against her. Flying at her side was the Shun Shun Rika spirits, fully grown to human size in response to a proper bond with their mistress. Each shield was able to act independently with each able to split into multiple sprites. The balls of raging fire and swirling water reacted to her boast by starting their next attack. Hinajiku. Lily. Right. The two defensive spirits called out as each turned into a shield to block a torrent of water or flare of fire. Keeping her will steadfast as she managed to hold the attack off, though she did feel a drain on her energy. Kenten Koshun. Oraheim recited as Bagan and Tsubaki turned into sprites and reassembled into Oraheim's reflective blade. Come on! She yelled out, raising her blade to the elemental spheres, glaring at them confident and defiant. The fire and water dissipated to reveal androgynous humanoid figures, red and blue and dressed in their respective elements of fire and water. There was a playful glint in their eyes as the fire spirit charged first, a blade made of flames in its hand as it charged at the budding exorcist. She blocked the attack and reflected the force and fire, only managing to make the spirit bounce back with its twin attacking her from behind. She barely had time to react as a trident made of water found its mark and sent her tumbling with a torrent of water. Ayam was immediately at her side and restoring her to a healthier state. Oraheim racked her brain, trying to think of something while Tsubaki's 5 other sprites tried attacking the two elementals, which was proving ineffective. Elemental spirits are always upper echelon spirits, Shuno explained as she joined Oraheim's side. Perhaps you should stop and try again later. Oraheim grit her teeth in anger at the thought that she was still weak. She was next to useless in Soul Society, couldn't bring herself to fight the Arrancar, and wasn't even that involved with everything else that happened. She swore to herself that she was going to be helpful to her allies, useful to Ichigo, become someone that was worth standing by her friends. It was then she noticed something while Tsubaki's many attacks were flying around the two elementals. They got close but never touched, even flinching when they almost brushed against the other. "Da!" She mentally admonished herself before lifting up her sword again and charging into the fray. The two spirits noticed her and fired a sphere of their elements at her, making her stop as the attacks came to her. "Gotta do this right," she told herself as she focused. Time seemed to slow to a crawl as the balls of fire and water came within range of her. She swung her blade at the ball of flames first. The second she felt the attack be reflected, she guided it towards the water elemental. Once she was satisfied with the alteration of the attack's reflection, she repeated with the other sphere, just barely managing to catch it before it struck her. Time returned to normal for her as the attacks went to their elemental opposite, exploding into clouds of steam filled with ethereal screams. "Bagan, Lily! Santen Keshin, Prism!" She called out, causing the two to split into their shield sprites and turning into a triangular prism, trapping the elementals inside. "Tsubaki, Koten Zanchuan, Waltz!" She called out, determined to make this the finale of the fight. Tsubaki's 6 sprites entered the prism and struck with lightning speed to the two elementals, passing through both to ensure damage to each spirit. Oraheim powered the attack for as long as she felt comfortable with before ending the assault and freeing the two, letting them drop in a weak and unconscious heap. She flicked her wrist and brought out 2 sealing paper charms before throwing them at the two. The papers attached to their head while Oraheim finished her spell. "Seal," she said simply as the two were absorbed into the sealing tags. She watched as the paper floated to the ground harmlessly. She dropped to her knees and tried to catch her breath. "Did you have to make it so hard, you two?" She cried out with a pout as many versions of the elementals appeared before her. "Yes. Yes, we did," the fire spirit said as it looked at its twin. "You wanted to contract us, and you're the first person to make any use out of those 6. The water spirit said, pointing to the Shun Shun Rika as they shrunk down. "We can't remember the last time someone realized their true strength. Had to make sure you were the real deal," the fiery one said with a chuckle. "That's because there was no last time," Tsubaki said with evident anger. The two elementals merely nodding in response. "Anyway, you passed our test," the blue spirit said with a bow. "Ignis and Aqua, accept this contract," he said as a pair of rings, blue and red, appeared on Oraheim's right index and middle fingers. "Be sure to get the other 2 soon, Master. I hope we get along," Oraheim said with a smile before falling over from exhaustion. "Shun-o. I am Soten Kishun," she called out, making the healing shield sigh. "With Yuryu, you're offering to help?" Yuryu asked, standing across from Bazard Black. "Why?" Bazby gave Yuryu the message that he wanted to talk to him alone, having a bit more faith in a fellow Quincy rather than the hybrid cousin currently in Soul Society. They were back in the Funftfeld and away from prying eyes for Baz's sake. He felt safer there, free to talk. "I'll be honest, I still feel loyalty to His Majesty, but I'm not so blind to simply accept whatever he does," the Heat said as he looked the mixed blood in the face. "What you said about Yawatch and what he did, it kind of hit a little close to home for me. So, in the event you are right about him, I'd rather be on a side that ensures I'll live," he said, earning a raised eyebrow from Yuryu. The bespectacled teen looked up to the trees in thought, wondering how to move the situation to his team's benefit. "Okay," he said after making his plan, "let's talk. What are some of the Sternritter's abilities?" He got the full overview from Tsukishima, but there was something else to this conversation for him. "Any new techniques we should be aware of? What makes a Sternritter? What is it about you guys that make you elites?" We have medallion seals that can take away a Bankai, Bazard started, a power-up state called the Volstandig, and a letter script. That's what we believe will tip the scales in our favor.
Script? Yurio asked, trying to press for more information.
Yes, we drink in some of His Majesty's blood, which allows him to carve a letter onto our soul. That becomes our script.
So is that why only pure-blooded Quincy were spared from the holy selection? He asked, glancing to the trees. Yep, we were born with our power. Bazard answered before looking confused. Wait, was that it? Yeah, you drink Yawach's blood and he carves in your script. Yuria said, trying to keep the stern Ritter focused. That's what you just said. Bazby looked confused before shrugging it off. Yeah, okay. He continued, though he was slightly shaken. He carves the letter onto our soul and determines what that letter is for. My own is the H, which is for the heat, and I can utilize fire and heat hotter than the sun. And he determined that? Yurio asked again while glancing upwards. I was always a hothead and I just loved fire. He said with a nostalgic smile before looking confused again. That's not right, what was I? How did you obtain this Volstandig? Yuria quickly changed the subject, knocking the H out of his confusion. Each and every one of us have used the Let Still and had our powers restored. He said, grimacing in pain slightly. Trying to mimic that feeling of the Let Still, we try to manipulate the ambient ratio to bring us to a higher powered state. Reaching out with every bit of ourselves to clothe ourselves in energy. There's a theoretical higher level, but no one even knows how to get to it. That or, no one thinks it matters now. Well, this has been interesting. Yuria said, trying to end the talk while looking at the trees. I'll be sure to let Ichigo and the others know what you told me. You sure you're alright with spying on Yawach? Why not? Bazard scoffed. He's not my king, Wait. He said before grasping his head in pain. Why did I say that? Yuria placed a hand on the stern Ritter's shoulder. That headache seems pretty severe. Maybe you should go lay down? Yuria suggested, getting a nod from the heat. Yeah, that sounds good. He said, stumbling for a second before disappearing in a burst of speed. Yuria waited for a couple of seconds before nodding and Tsukishima appearing at his side. Was that a success? He asked the Foolbringer as he returned his bookmark to his book. It gave some credence to my theory, but I can't be too sure if it'll work or not. Tsukishima told him as he mulled over his personal findings. I've always done some memories to suit my desires, but nothing on this scale. If it works, then Ichigo and myself will be better equipped to fight Yawach. Yuria reminded him, stressing the importance of the test. You said Ichigo can manifest his Quincy powers, correct? The reader asked the archer, earning a nod of confirmation. Tsukishima let a devious smile cross his features. I might have an idea. The next day. Same day as Yamamoto's surprise test. Yuria was flying through the air, sniping down masses of low-level hollows that came out of nowhere. That was a mild annoyance to what else was going on. According to reports, there were 2 instances of an unsanctioned Senkaman opening, with an investigation finding 3 different Gigace with Ryatsu suppression properties while the other revealed a trio with a carriage that was making a great effort to stay hidden. Adding to that was the recent information that Ishin got from the commander, a scion of nobility was in danger of an illegal weapons dealers that could put all of Seoul society at risk. They just got their memories back and now they had another mess to deal with. To make matters worse, he was ordered by Ishin to look more like a Shinigami/Quincy, and no, Ishin had no reason other than because. A black version of what he wore when infiltrating Seoul society with blue lines, it was too hot for form-fitting black. At least the squad is really coming into its own. Yuria remarked, watching the battalion of Soul Reapers cutting down the hollows with ease. Even some of the Foolbringers were helping, Jackie backing up Chad as they crushed their enemies. But where did that bait come from? He said, thinking back to another unexplained erasure buildup that was reminiscent of Hollowbait. Are those 3 unknowns involved? Excuse me. He heard a young girl's voice call out to him.
He looked down to see a person with a wide brim hat with a veil hiding her face wearing a pink floral kimono that seemed to be of high quality.
Are you one of the soul reapers of this town?
Yuria felt his eye twitch, not sure how he was supposed to feel about being called a soul reaper, but he dropped down to speak to the girl. My name is Yuryu Ishida, and I am the third seat of Squad 15. The archer greeted her calmly.
Would I be correct in assuming that you are Rurakayo Kasumiyaji?
The girl nodded before walking towards him.
Since you know who I am, I require your assistance in bringing me something to EAH.
She started, showing disregard to his position before tripping over her feet and onto the ground.
Ow wow dot.
She groaned as her veil came off, revealing her long blonde hair held back by a band and green eyes.
Cute kid.
That veil looked ridiculous anyway. Yuria quipped, making his way to the noble and helping her up. She quickly realized her situation before trying to look as dignified as possible to the Quincy and making her demands known as dozens more hollows cried out in hunger.
Now, bring me something to eat and quickly.
She ordered, not realizing he wasn't paying attention as he scanned the sky.
Are you listening to me? The noble demanded furiously.
People usually say please before asking for something. He said dryly as he spotted two Shinigami, not belonging to his squad, being chased by several hollows, and I don't play caterer to a selfish brat that can't say one simple word. I'm more of a tailor. He conjured his bow as took aim, trying to ignore the girl's whining about her hunger and demands for food.
Shut up.
He growled, releasing part of his Ryatsu and quieting down the girl so he could focus. Two in front to avoid killing, roughly 20 hollows behind them, closing in the distance from almost half a kilometer.
Child's play without distractions.
He released his shot and multiple arrows flew fast and true, grazing the two Shinigami to the limit of trimming their hair and light scratches. They landed in front of Yuryu as he stood protectively in front of Rurakayo. One had short hair and icy blue eyes while the other had a small patch of hair in the shape of a lightning bolt and looked bigger than Chad. Rurakayo Kasumiyaji, you are to be taken into the protective custody of Squad 15 during your stay in the world of the living, he said to the princess, earning a glare from the two likely bodyguards of the noble.
Who do you think you are, peasant? The smaller of the two growled.
They then felt a crushing spiritual pressure as someone they couldn't refuse came to the scene. He is one of my third seats, and he is acting on my orders. The pair looked behind them to see the mildly annoyed captain of the 15th squad.
And I'm acting on orders from the old man.
Illustrated Guide to Soul Reapers.
Zombie thriller. Maybe I should take some pain meds before going to bed.
Basby sighed as he made his way home, occasional throbs of pain hitting him as he tried to figure out what happened to him earlier with Yuryu.
Man, what a headache.
He reached his shared home with his fellow and pulled the door open. 'Cause this is thriller.
Thriller night.
He watched the scene in front of him, which he didn't think was real. Giselle was dressed like the king of pop and doing the thriller dance, in the hideout, with an army of zombie animal critters. He simply shut the door and started walking towards the hospital.
Or I have a brain tumor.
Better go check.
Training continues.
Urahara and Mayuri were at the training site where Rukia, Hormura, and Shizuku were training to control their holomasks along with the other wizards. The siblings were able to hold their masks for minutes while Rukia barely managed half of one. They were watching, gathering data, when an important question was asked.
I thought you said you had a new training method for them. Rose asked, flinching when Rukia took a hard kick to the face.
I told Hiyori about it earlier.
Kisuke admitted, drinking some tea.
It's called, grievously injure someone until they leave you alone, or get stronger and take credit for it. Hiyori then kicked Rukia into a crater that was followed by a low groan of pain.
Ichigo's going to kill you later. Shinji warned, happy to not be on the receiving end of Hiyori's tantrums for once. I know.
Still fun to watch.
Chapter 54, Attacks in Darkness. Squad 15 Base, Urahara Shoten.
It was late and Ishin was mulling over the information he had at the moment. 1. The Kasumiyaji family was in a difficult situation that may end in bloodshed. 2. Someone within the family, likely a high-ranking member, was manufacturing dangerous and illegal weapons. 3. The heir to the family was brought to the world of the living with the intention of hiding under their noses, a plan that came crashing down. 4. He was going to kill Kenryu with that stick up his ass if he kept annoying him. Captain Ishin, the smaller of the two guards and the aptly named Kenryu, said, "I know I mustn't bother, but I must insist on better accommodations for Lady Rurikayo." The larger Enrya nodded in agreement, moving his hands about frantically. "Surely a captain, and a noble, such as yourself understand the importance of dash." "For the last time, Kenryu," Ishin growled out. "Shut up and let them play ball," he yelled while pointing to Rurikayo, dressed in blue shorts and a white t-shirt, kicking a ball around with Yuzu and Karen, laughing the whole while. "To you, she's a princess, to the squad and myself, she's just a little girl. Let her enjoy herself a little bit. If you're worried about her protection, remember this. She is in the most secure area in the world of the living to anything spiritual. My fourth seat has orders to not let anyone without clearance go near them." Suddenly Rurikayo tripped and fell, prompting Enrya to freak out and rush outside, and was sent flying back in when Chad punched him. "Like that? How do we not have clearance to be by her side?" the attendant demanded as a garganta opened in the room. Kenryu immediately got ready to attack when Ichigo finally came through. "Because I don't want you anywhere near my daughters," the captain said, shoving the attendant aside to give his son his full attention. "How's things in Soul Society, Ichigo?" Other than seeing how poorly prepared Soul Society is in the event of an invasion, Rukia and the siblings seem to be doing rather well. Ichigo answered, just now noticing the two new figures in the barracks. "New recruits? New mess," the father responded before pointing to the three girls. "The new kid is Rurikayo Kasumiyaji, heir to the Kasumiyaji family. A noble family just under our own in ranking because they once supplied the people with weapons before the Gotiei formed and Zanpakuto became the weapons of choice. They were thanked with noble status, but none of the responsibilities of the great noble houses. Just playing the nobles' game, so long as they keep a lid on something dangerous they control." "And they screwed up?" Ichigo asked, sensing where the conversation was heading. "No, or not yet at least," Ishin responded, sensing Kenryu's growing anxiety at how much the Gotiei knew. "We only got speculation and guesses, the most probable being that someone high up in the family is trying to take it over. His name is Gyokaku Kumoi," Kenryu said, giving the Soul Reapers what they wanted and needed, knowing it was their best chance. Lady Rurikayo's mother died giving birth to her while illness took her father soon after. Kumoi has been serving as the temporary viceroy for the clan until Lady Rurikayo comes of age. Lately vassals under his service, mainly people that seem to disagree with him, have begun to disappear. Anyone that doesn't fall in line with his ruling is soon disposed of, and weird incidents have begun to happen around Lady Rurikayo. Using what few people we could trust, we had Gigace made and planted for us to retrieve when we came to hide in the world of the living." He released a sigh as the weight of the past few days seemed to appear on his shoulders. "We have no evidence to prove these suspicions, so we wanted to avoid involving the Gotiei." "Avoid it by going into the most active squad's territory, where some of the most observant Soul Reapers are supposed to be?" Ichigo restated, needing to understand what was going through this guy's head. "Hoping to slip by in the confusion of us doing our jobs? You passed through the private Senkaman of the Kasumiyaji because the old soul phones couldn't get any data from private Senkaman, didn't you?" The attendant nodded to the captain's question. "Tough luck there, security measures had to become stricter, so now nothing spiritual occurs without our knowing. So now, what to do about this little coup of yours?" Ishin leaned back to think. He needed someone that could protect Rurikayo when worst came to worst while also maintaining her calm and not arousing suspicions. His nose caught the scent of fresh cookies as he looked idly toward the kitchen where Oraheim made a fresh batch and was sharing it with Rurikayo, Karen, and Yuzu. An idea popped into his head at that moment. "Hey Oraheim," he called, getting the exorcist's attention. "How about you and Ichigo becoming parents?" he suggested, knowing his son was about to beat his skull in. Safe house, temporary living quarters for the Kasumiyaji. The next day came and Ichigo was helping Kenryu and Enryu move his new family into their new home. After punching his father enough times to get rid of his embarrassment, Ishin explained the reasoning for this. It was to give Rurikayo a more proper disguise while keeping a healer and bodyguard around her at all times, a last line of defense. Rurikayo was supposed to remain ignorant of the goings-on, so the explanation of the family cover was to help her integrate into the living world much easier. Ishin promised sentries around the clock and Ichigo would only have to fight when truly necessary. Ichigo forgot his dad could be mature sometimes, and he ruined the moment with, "Besides, it'd be good for you to get ready for all my future grandkids." Chad had to carry the old man back to his home after Ichigo was done with him.
"And you promised that this will stay under wraps?"
Kenryo asked, his concern being in keeping the Kasumiyaji family stable and strong. If word of this got out, it'd put the family at risk with the other nobles.
"I shouldn't ask much, but dash.
Listen, pal, I don't give a damn about this nobility game you seem to think matters." Ichigo growled out, finally getting the sofa in place. "The only thing we care about is keeping her safe and the security of Seoul society as a whole. You worry about the nobility crap if it worries you that much." Kenryo had to hold himself back from talking back, reminding himself that Ichigo is of nobility with the Shiba and their return as a great noble house, as well as being a lieutenant and disciple of the head captain in the Gotei. He heard tales of Ichigo's prowess and crass behavior, but he needed to really see to understand, and while he had yet to really see his strength, his crude behavior was the genuine article.
Not too long after, Rurikayo appeared with Oraheim not far behind. "Oni-chan!" Rurikayo sang out, running to Ichigo, aglomping him.
After the decision to have Ichigo and Oraheim pose as her parents, her jigai was altered to have orange hair and lighter brown eyes. Ichigo looked down to the girl hugging him with slight confusion.
"Context. I need context, please,"
the hybrid said, looking at his lover and ignoring the crying attendants in the corner. "Well, Rurikayo told me that while she understood that it was for her protection, she refused to think of us as her parents." Oraheim explained with a smile as she looked at the young noble. "So I told her to think of us as her older siblings, if that helped." Ichigo looked down at the kid who was still hugging him before adopting a gentle smile and patting her head.
"So, after school tomorrow, we're going to the mall,"
Oraheim announced, with Ichigo simply accepting.
He wasn't spending enough time with Oraheim or Tatsuki lately. Later that night,
Yuria sat on the edge of a roof, quite a ways from the safe house, but still with a near-perfect vantage point to be a sniper. He was back in his white Quincy robes after a general consensus. He looked better in white, and ready to keep first watch. There was some goofing around with the new family, but it seemed like Ichigo was actually enjoying himself. Oraheim was almost always happy, and the kid seemed to like the arrangements herself. Hours passed with little incident as the trio found themselves asleep. That was when he felt it.
"Feels like one guy," said Riruka, as she joined Yuria's side.
The Fullbringers were becoming eager to test their new skills, so they were assisting, and Riruka pulled the short straw.
"What's the plan?"
"I'll engage while you watch and record," Yuria said, standing up and tensing to move. The second red flashes appeared on the barrier. "The second he starts to run, seal him up in one of your dolls." He ignored her whining about it being uncute as the assailant broke through. The archer immediately shot several bolts at the attacker and forcing him back. The Quincy took the chance to make it to the roof with his Hirenkyaku and attacked with a Seal Schneider. The assassin wore dark concealing clothes with reddish-pink armor and wielding a blade mounted on his wrist with an odd mirror in the center of the guard. He was immediately cautious of whatever properties the mirror might have held, some instinct telling him that part was the main issue. "I'm guessing it'd be pointless to ask you who your masters are," he said, only getting the assassin to raise his blade for combat.
"Never that easy."
The assassin charged at him, intent on cutting through the Quincy, and Yuria simply evaded. Every swing was met with a dodge as the archer gracefully moved, keeping his eyes on the weapon he suspected was a Bakoto. His attacker backed off when he saw his attempts were proving fruitless and took a change of tactics. He caught the moon's light in the mirror on the guard and reflected it directly to Yuria's face. Everything seemed to go black until he returned to consciousness with the assassin directly in front of him. He managed to dodge the stab and chopped the guy in the throat and back of his neck, making the assassin stumble. "I've been knocked out enough times to know that sensation," Yuria thought as he analyzed what happened as his opponent caught his breath. "Since that thing has a mirror, He probably needs light to make it work and reflect a specific light wavelength to make someone temporarily blackout. Yuria straightened himself out and stretched his back before shutting his eyes.
Not risking another glance.
I'll let the Squad 12 squints do the study. Utilizing his years of blind archery training and racer sense, he tracked the movements of the assassin as he tried the light reflection method again. Yuria became dizzy as a result of the light shining into his face, but with his eyes shut the effect was weakened greatly. The assassin charged again and Yuria leaped into action, using his blood to power his defense and strength as he grabbed the blade and tore the whole thing off his opponent before punching him in the stomach. The assassin collapsed, barely conscious, and Riruka showed up behind him.
Addiction shot,
she said, shooting him in the back with a heart and placing her tag on him.
I permit you.
The Fullbringer pulled out a teddy bear and, in an aura of pink energy, the assassin was absorbed into the doll.
Now what? The girl asked the Quincy, who held up the weapon. Now we get this to Urahara and see what he can find out,
he said, feeling the weapon react as if it was alive. Since he won't talk, take him to Tsukishima.
That'll be the easiest way to get an answer out of him.
Roger that, Yuryu. What the?
Riruka said as she felt something warm and wet soaking her doll.
Gross, she cried as a red liquid was spreading through the fabric. Yurio's eyes widened as he recognized the blood, with his mind working overtime to figure out what was happening.
Kido seal? No, I'd sense that. Hidden dagger? He wouldn't be able to use that. Did he?
Shit, he thought as he figured out what the assassin did.
Get him out. He bit off his tongue.
He ordered as Riruka took a second to get over her shock and use her hair to tickle her nose before sneezing on the doll. The assassin came out, blood dripping through his face mask and onto the ground as the sound of breathing could be heard.
He's making himself drown in his own blood?
He said in shock as he approached the dying man, who was doing everything in his power to keep Yuria back. Soon the assassin passed out from blood loss and fell off the roof. Yuria felt the man disappear as his life faded and he cursed. A dead body couldn't give any answers that they needed, especially if Kumoi was being as careful as they thought he was.
Failure, I take it? Riruka asked, trying to keep her lunch down.
Yuryu glared at the dead body that laid on the ground. He wondered if this was how Ichigo felt when Aizen managed to escape him, because Yuria felt pissed.
Partially,
he answered as he felt the attendants settle down and some of his squad mates came for the corpse before it burst into fire. A very well hidden Kido deadman switch to eliminate all traces of the assassin. We protected the girl, now they'll be sending the big guns and we do have something from all this. He looked at the blade in his hand with disgust before heading back to base, Chad coming over to take his shift.
Squad 15 base.
After his capture, he killed himself, Ishin said, finishing his report to the leader of the Gotii. Yamamoto stroked his beard in thought, contemplating the next course of action to take. Without the assassin to interrogate, they wouldn't get a confession. Kibune was become much more cautious around his squad and the only thing they found on Amagai was that he joined the Onmatsukido at a young age. He cursed the lackadaisical lifestyle that put them in such an unprepared state, and though he could force an investigation of the Kasumiyaji grounds, he refused to become a full tyrant as he had centuries ago.
Continue protecting young Rurikayo, Yamamoto finally responded.
I have full faith in your squad's abilities to keep her safe. Sooner or later, Kumoi's side will slip up and then we'll end this. The connection was cut as Ishin looked back to the Bakoto behind its sealed display box. The weapon was indeed confirmed to be alive when it tried to attach to Rin until one of his squad forced it down. That, and the creepy yellow eye that was looking at everyone gave it away. The Squad 12 member was supposed to return to his division with the weapon, along with an armed escort, and they would get Hiyori back. She claimed that they can spar with each now to strengthen their masks, and she missed her job, mostly her snacks and sitting on her butt. The biggest threat so far is the hidden abilities a Bakoto might have, Yuria said, speaking up from behind his captain. Similar to secret trump cards Zanpakuto may have for their wielders. The obvious solution there is to stop them from using those abilities by defeating them quickly,
Ishin plotted.
The problem there is that they'll kill themselves quickly, and Tsukishima can't extract memories from corpses. But he can do so while they are distracted. They heard said Foolbringer say as he came back. I got back from Urahara and he agrees there's an 85% chance of success with my idea about Ichigo. On this Kasumiyaji matter, one cut is all I need. He said with a sinister smile. Man, that guy's creepy. The two officers thought. With Rurakayo. The sounds of yelling and muffled combat roused the young noble girl from her slumber. The young girl rubbed the sleep from her eyes as she looked at her current situation. She was used to waking up alone, and Ryu and Kenrya nearby to offer any comfort they could. Now, her attendants were gone and she was between a beautiful older woman and a handsome man. For a second, they looked like the pictures of her parents that were around the Kasumiyaji house before her eyes adjusted and she recognized her new bodyguards. Remembering her parents were gone brought up some old pain she's tried to hide as her eyes began to water. Bad dream? She heard Oraheim ask tiredly as the exorcist pulled the noble in for a hug. There. I'm here, Ruri-chan. Oraheim said before softly humming while stroking the girl's hair. What is this warmth? She asked herself as Ichigo's arm reached over both of them, cocooning her in their embrace. Is this what it would have been like with my parents? She listened to Oraheim humming her lullaby, her eyes growing heavy with every note. The viceroy ordered, earning a nod from his subordinate. Understood, sir. Illustrated Guide to Soul Reapers. Poor Rin. Haven't slept in days. Rin moaned out as he worked. Never got to have any of those World of the Living sweets. Just watching the screens with that pile of candies waiting in that corner. He shuddered as he remembered Lisa attacking him with a riding crop when he got too close. But it'll be worth it. Captain Ishin promised me the jawbreaker thing if I fix up these crappy excuses for Gig Ace. He said, sparing a glance as the ball of sugar as he finished the final steps in the Kasumiyaji clan's Gig Ace. He never moved so fast in his life as he tore off the wrapping and watched the multicolored ball as if it was a holy relic. He slowly brought it to his mouth drooling and eyes watering. How about you and Ichigo becoming parents? Rin's eyes bulged out of his skull. He was barely paying attention, but he knew he now had more work. Lisa was already in the corner with her discipline stick. Chapter 55, Kidnapped Princess. With Ishin. A few hours after the first attack was when Hiyori finally returned and Rin left. Why the kid was crying as he ran through the Senkamen, he wasn't sure, but he felt like he should blame Lisa. It was also good that Urahara was a fast and efficient worker. Rin was able to fix and modify Gig Ace, but he didn't have the materials to make them. That's one thing he regrets not asking for when he took his station. And here you go, dumbass. Hiyori said as she revealed Ichigo and Oraheim's new disguise Gig Ace. The only distinguishing difference was that they were older-looking versions of themselves with different hairstyles. Ichigo's was still his messy, spiky look, but it was longer, like he went a couple months without a haircut, and Oraheim's was shortened to a ponytail with a bob cut. Now they can pass for adults. I know this wouldn't fool the neighbors, but Karakura's a big place and we're only trying to fool people that don't know them. Ishin said, feeling like this was a mistake somewhere but not sure where. Well, someone deliver these to Ichigo and Oraheim. He ordered as one of his squad members saluted and took the bodies. Now to wait for those assassins to try again. He said as he spared a glance to Tsukishima. We'll end this soon enough. At the safe house? That was so much fun. The young princess cheered as she sat down at the table. She was enrolled in a nearby middle school, Urahara being some kind of miracle worker with plenty of connections still around, with a constant watch of her attendants. The excuse there was pretty much the truth in that she was sheltered and they were her attendants to make sure nothing bad happened. The school system simply accepted it when the principal gave the okay, and then his creepy insistence that it was okay. After classes let out, she was picked up by Ichigo and Oraheim, who were both in their disguised Gig Ace, and earning the attention of all the students there solely on their looks. Feeling a small bit of jealousy, she actually ran to them yelling Mom and Dad. Afterward, they kept their word and went to the mall, going into various stores and spending a little time in the arcade. The world of the living is filled with so much wonder.
You're lucky to be here, she said to her two false parents, with Kenryo and Enryo crying tears of joy. It truly is a wonderful world,
Oraheim said as she passed out the curry dinner she made.
Now, eat up while it's hot. Rurakayo quickly gave thanks and took a big spoonful of the rice and curry. Wow! This is delicious, she said with elation. This is the best meal I've ever had.
I can relax and enjoy it, so much better than those stuffy aristocratic dinners. Kenryo looked like he wanted to protest to Rurakayo's actions but stayed his voice as she continued to enjoy her meal. Until she stopped when she noticed something she didn't like.
Rurakayo, is everything okay?
Oraheim asked, prompting the princess to scoop up a slice of carrot.
I do not like these,
she answered, looking down at the vegetable on her spoon.
That's too bad,
Ichigo said, not sternly but not too gentle either. Eat everything on your plate, Rurakayo, it's rude to everyone that worked hard to make that meal. From the farmers that grew those vegetables all the way to Oraheim cooking it. This earned a look of surprise from the girl he was protecting.
Farmers grow all of these? Ichigo could only look at the young soul in surprise.
Yeah, and it takes a lot of work to grow even a single plant, he told her before turning his glare to the two attendants who started sweating under his gaze.
What have you two been telling her? Well, we didn't want to,
Kenryo stammered while Enryo started signing like crazy.
Don't bother Ichigo,
Rurakayo spoke out, tired but also hurt.
They never tell me the whole truth about anything.
Everyone looked at her with surprise and guilt in the case of the Kasumiyaji attendants. I may not have ever given any thought as to where my food comes from, but I am not a fool. I know that the Kasumiyaji don't warrant the full-time protection of a lieutenant-class Soul Reaper, but you're still here, so it must be something terrible. She looked at the two with tear-filled eyes as she demanded answers. Why do you two still try to keep me in the dark?
She was soon pulled into a warm and enveloping hug by Oraheim. There, Ruri-chan,
she said, stroking the girl's hair soothingly.
How about you and I go out for ice cream and we can talk? Does that sound good?
Rurakayo slowly felt herself cling to Oraheim as she slowly nodded. The exorcist smiled and took the girl by the hand as she guided the princess outside to get them both some ice cream.
Ichigo, would you mind having a chat with Kenryo and Enryo?
She suggested before leaving. The two attendants were torn between being devastated that they hurt their charge so much, and utterly terrified as Ichigo sported a malicious grin.
With Oraheim?
I know they mean well, but I'm tired of being treated like a child, Rurakayo said, idly licking her frozen treat while talking about her troubles to Oraheim as she sat in her lap.
She never thought about anything because she was never told about anything.
If she knew about how much effort and care went into anything in her life, she wouldn't have been so selfish. Now they're lying to her about her safety, that a lieutenant's protection was normal for a noble like herself, but even she's heard about the hybrid that brought change to the Soul Society.
I know what that is like, Rurakayo,
she said with a nostalgic and sad smile. When I was younger, all I had was my older brother. We were in a terrible situation with our parents and he took me away from them the first chance he had. From there, he was my version of your attendants. We didn't have the same luxuries that you've enjoyed, but he made sure I was happy with what I had. Eventually, I was tired of him treating me like a child and I yelled at him when he gave me these hairpins. Later that same day, he was in a terrible accident. Rurakayo turned to look at her protector as a thought of losing Enryo and Kenryo passed through her mind. I was never more scared in my life, terrified that I would lose my brother and the last thing he would remember of me was that I yelled at him.
All because he wanted to see me happy. I never thought of it that way,
the princess said as she looked down at her ice cream and thought about the happy memories she had with her two attendants.
You're important to them, Rurakayo, you just need to remember that they care for you,
the exorcist said with a caring smile. As for why we're protecting you, Bagan, she started before immediately calling out one of her shields and blocking an attack from another dark-clothed man. He had a regular katana blade, but Oraheim was more concerned with the large cloth-wrapped paddle-shaped thing on his back. Word of our squad protecting you should have reached these people, she said with an edge to her voice. I'm guessing they need to be reminded on why it's a bad decision to attack Squad 15. She flicked her wrist and the shield pushed against the assassin, sending him back several feet.
Oraheim!
Rurikayo cried out as the sixth seat set her aside and strode out confidently to their attacker. Please be careful, she whispered before she was trapped in a triangular pyramid of Oraheim's shield barriers.
Don't worry, Rurikayo,
she said as her Kenten Koshuan blade appeared.
We've got this.
The assassin threw away his sword to reveal the thing on his back.
A large Guandao spear with buzzsaw teeth on the top of the blade.
What was odd about it was the short handle with a large bent portion at the end. Oraheim watched in disgust as the thing spat out a fleshy tendril with several smaller tentacles and the assassin plunged his hand directly into the monstrosity, becoming one with the blade.
That was gross, Tsubaki said to no one in particular.
The assassin slammed the blade into the ground and sent a torrent of green energy at her. Oraheim took a breath and swung her reflection blade and managed to send the energy back to the assassin, just as the energy solidified into stone.
I'll be honest, I'm surprised we could do that, Oraheim said, blinking in surprise.
The power wave broke through the stone wall it created with twice its original force and mixed with the debris to become a shrapnel-filled wave of pain as the attack returned to the assassin. Oraheim felt sick to her stomach as she heard the pained cries of her attacker. The dust slowly settled as Oraheim saw the mangled and bloody wreck of the assassin. Behind her, she heard Rurikayo gag and puke as she felt her own stomach turn at the sight.
Hollows were one thing, this was not what she ever wanted.
Isshin and Tatsuki soon arrived on the scene. Tatsuki froze while Isshin went to the healer.
What happened?
He asked, not harshly, not demanding. He was gentle and trying to help Oraheim get herself back together, lest she break. I reflected his attack back to him, and she said, numbly as she tried to process what happened.
Isshin.
I
didn't. She went silent as Isshin pulled her in for a hug. Breath Oraheim. In and out, I'm right here, he instructed, guiding her to calm down and gather her wits. You did your job, Oraheim.
You kept Rurikayo safe.
It's going to be okay. Maybe I can still heal him,
Oraheim said, knowing she was grasping at straws. Isshin was going to say something when Shuno and Iam showed up at their mistress's side.
You can definitely do that,
Iam told her, making Oraheim look hopeful while Isshin was gobsmacked.
Our barriers never really healed per se, Oraheim,
Shuno continued for her fellow spirit.
We just rejected the damage.
We're the flower petals of rejection. Rejecting attacks, enemies, and events was part of our title for the contract.
If you wanted, you could reject someone's entire existence. So, as long as there's remains, you can even reverse death.
She finished with a smile while everyone was looking at the spirits in shock and awe.
We haven't met anyone that had that kind of heart and will though. Wanna be the first?
It took her a second to shake herself out of her shock, but Oraheim sprinted towards the corpse with the others close behind her.
Shuno, Iam, Soten Kishun.
She knelt by the body and called out to both spirits, making them split into twos to double the healing effect as she got to the assassin just as Keto flames began to erupt on his body. Just as progress was being made, an explosion of smoke engulfed the four and blinded them. After a few seconds to shake off the surprise, Isshin waved his arm and dispersed the smoke cloud with a gust of wind.
Is everyone okay?
He asked, taking a quick scan of the group.
I'm fine, Pops,
Tatsuki said, coughing out some last bits of smoke.
I am fine as well,
Rurikayo said as she opened her eyes. When she did, she saw the same thing that froze Isshin and Tatsuki. The assassin's body had burnt to ash, and Oraheim was gone.
Siri-iti.
I told you to retrieve the princess, the head assassin under Kumoi said to his subordinate, Oraheim laying unconscious between them. Her disguise had her with orange hair, so I would be forgiving in this circumstance considering there were two girls with orange hair. Not so much with how you mixed up a child with a teenager. They were in an abandoned field on the Kasumiyaji grounds, but still private property outside of the Gotiai's range.
My apologies, Lord Hansa. The kidnapper told his superior. However, it seemed like the rumors of her odd abilities were also true. She was actually resurrecting the last assassin that attacked them. Hansa took a moment to digest this information. I am going to be lenient since we can use this girl to deal with that Kurosaki boy. The scarred assassin said, an idea forming in his mind. But, if what you say is true, then you just brought us an invaluable test subject for our Bakoto. Lord Komoi will be pleased with this then. The unnamed assassin sighed in relief. Just then, a crushing pressure suddenly appeared. The air was forced from their lungs and the air felt more solid than before. The two were suffocating as they tried to process what was happening. They were looking around until Hansa froze. There, standing in the sky with burning black wings and swirling dark rapier was the truest image of a Shinigami that the assassin had ever seen in his life. The assassin fled for his life, feeling a sense of fear he had long since buried climb its way back up and made him run as far from that reaper standing in the sky. The other one was frozen, stuck in place after seeing that piercing golden stare. Almost instantly, that reaper was standing just a few feet away from him. He instantly recognized this being was the hybrid that Kumoi's benefactors wanted dead, Ichigo Kurosaki. The boy's face was impassive, but the energy he was unleashing was anything but stoic and his black and gold eyes promised only death. The assassin dropped to his knees as his vision became hazy, cloudy as the hybrid walked toward him. No. Please. He choked out as he tried to move out of the way of the hybrid. Ichigo ignored the man as he suppressed his Ryatsu upon reaching Oraheim's unconscious form. He gently lifted the girl in a bridal carry, taking care to make sure she was still alive and smiling upon confirmation of such. He began walking away again, a garganta opening before him as the kidnapper took his chance to run. He took one step before a black box engulfed him. Heido number 90, Koro Hitsuji. Ichigo said as he left the Soul Society. The Kido faded as an unrecognizable mass of flesh remained before burning away. Central 46 Chambers. That boy needs punishment. One of the judges yelled at Yamamoto. He is your student yet he lacks discipline. Invading private property, causing undue panic amongst the populace, we knew he was going to be trouble. Another of the sages said. He cannot be allowed to roam free, even as a member of the Gotei. Tell me, members of the Central 46, Genryusai started, are any of you fully aware of the circumstances that led to Ichigo Kurosaki's actions? Yes, a member of his squad was found on the Kasumiyaji grounds. Where is the so-called kidnapper? Another judge asked. Without evidence, that boy is facing criminal charges. That boy has done more for Soul Society than this office ever has. Yamamoto spoke, anger burning in his tone. And currently, there is an investigation on numerous assassination attempts on the Kasumiyaji heiress. Several eyewitness accounts and memory recordings prove someone is after the young princess's life. And that lets that child do whatever he pleases? He trespassed on private dash. He was interrupted with a loud crack as Yamamoto fractured the ground once again and brought the weight of his Ryatsu down on the group. His squad member was kidnapped. She was found unconscious with two mysterious figures on the Kasumiyaji grounds. Rurakayo Kasumiyaji had given him permission to enter her lands, of which we have a recording. My student has done nothing wrong. He yelled, increasing the pressure in the room. He knows he is not above the law. I know that I am not above the law. No one is above the law, something the nobility seems to have forgotten. Your duty is to study and keep the law. If you are incapable of doing that, then I will. He growled at the judges, turning and leaving while the 46 shook in terror. The only man that they could have influenced to keep the hybrid in line had just made it clear that he was on his student's side. The Central 46 began to question just how strong their authority really was now. Illustrated Guide to Soul Reapers. Ishin's Note. Ichigo and Oraheim got their new bodies for their disguises and did a quick look over of their new bodies. Older Ichigo looks hot. Oraheim moaned, looking at Ichigo examining his full body. Double Ichigo fu. Take a cold shower, Oraheim. Ichigo said, trying to avoid looking at Oriheim's Jigai and thinking similar thoughts. Just then, he noticed a note, conveniently placed on his groin like a sensor bar. He pulled it off of himself and read what it said. Do not think about bedroom fun with these. You have a child now. Wait until she's deeply asleep or at a friend's place. That's how you got your sisters. Soon to be Grandpa Ishin. Pretty sure I'm going to actually kill him this time. That wraps up this part of What If Ichigo Awoke His True Powers to Save His Mother. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.